What's going on? Welcome back to Live Actually. I am Four Corners, and I'm so happy you're here because I have a banger of an episode for you. My guest today is not a musician. She's not an artist, but she is definitely making a massive impact on the music industry as we know it. A true creative serial entrepreneur in every sense of the term. She's done everything from concert promotion to photography to graphic design to marketing. You name it, she's done it. And in this conversation, we get into all of that, from her origin story and all of the things that she's done that's led up to this present day and her new biggest venture ever. Now, I'm not going to tell you about it. I'm going to let her do that. You got to stick around. So without further ado, this is Alienyeux.
What do you want?
I am here with one of my favorite people in the entire universe. She goes by the name of Alienyeux. How you doing?
Doing good.
Am I calling you Alienyeux today, or am I calling you by your gubby?
No, definitely not my gubby. Never my gubby.
Your gubby is on your socials.
Yeah, but Alienyeux is the vibes.
Okay. I'm going to pretend that I call her Alien. It's not what I actually call her. It's not what most people actually call you, except for people who don't personally know you.
And that's how I like to separate the two. I think that gives me the ability to be like, okay, how well do you know me?
I can relate.
You know?
I can relate. When people run up and say, hey, Four Corners. I'm like, you know of me, or you know me, but not necessarily that. We're giving away right now.
Yeah.
We're totally giving away the sauce. People are going to start calling us by our gubbies. Don't do that. Don't do that.
No gubbies in here.
How are you feeling today? How is the vibes?
That's interesting you asked, because I was actually talking to a few friends earlier today, and I woke up feeling like super grateful, a little bit emotional, a little bit sensitive, but that mood really switched up like shortly after, because I started feeling, aggressive is not the right word. I started feeling more in need of asserting dominance.
I was going to say you woke up and chose violence, but I feel like you woke up and then violence chose you.
That's a good way to put it.
Because you weren't actually violent out of the gate. You were just like, wait a minute. I remember who I am.
Yeah.
And then you decided to assert dominance on the world.
And it's interesting, too, because I find that this week has been, like, poetic and emotional, and I really took the time to process a lot that has happened over the last few weeks that I haven't had the time to. And
it has been a few weeks.
It's been a few weeks.
We'll get into it.
And I call this, like, my cocoon period, like, where you cocoon yourself in your place, you sit there, you really reflect, and you hopefully come out of it as a butterfly, maybe as a bat.
What?
Like today I feel just...
I don't think that's how bats are made.
Maybe not. But in my mind, if you're more violent than a butterfly, I guess you're a bat. Okay,
I see the parallel. Not the same thing scientifically, biologically, or in the real world, but I see your train of thought. You have had a very interesting past few weeks. I want to get into specifically. Well, first of all, for those who don't know Alienyeux, I want to make sure that you know who she is and what she does. This is a burgeoning tech giant. She's a tech giant in the making. She's been actually working in the field I know of you working in tech for, I would say maybe about 4 or 5 years. You often mention something called Smart Refer, which was your introduction into the tech world and into Web3. What initially attracted you to that, and how do you feel that has played a part in your evolution to what you're working on now, which is a music platform on the blockchain?
What originally really attracted me to Web3 was this idea that in the same industry, not everything has to be cutthroat. Like, there's the ability for us to be in the same space and help each other and build together. And to me, that was always so beautiful, because going and being an entrepreneur for so many years, it was nice to feel that way. Because often I find that, like, when we're in that space of, building our startups, building our businesses, sometimes even when we meet competition, it's always so hostile. And I never felt that in Web3. Like, I felt like that people were that I was connecting with that were in the same space were like, you know what? We do the same thing, but I actually did this and this and this already, so I can help you with that. Like, here's the contact, here's the company.
Right.
And to me, that was so beautiful because I'm like, okay, well, why wouldn't we help each other? If we have the resources, like, there's enough food for all of us.
Abundance mindset.
Yeah, exactly. The abundance mindset was so different to me, like, from what everything I knew coming from, like, male-dominated industries, first in nightlife, then, like, in wealth management, and then coming into, like, marketing and how cutthroat that was. So this was such a light at the end of the tunnel. And, like, I was like a moth to a flame. I'm like, I want to be a part of that.
Okay.
Yes.
It just felt great.
Yeah, it felt amazing.
Okay, to back up a little bit, again, I'm speaking to you because I know you very well, and I'm kind of speaking as if everybody understands. There is a lot of information that we haven't shared because you've done a lot of things. You are one of the people that I like to consider not just a jack of all trades, but like you master things and then you move on to something else and then you move on to something else, but you still keep the skills that you've acquired in each thing. So when I met you, and the story is funny because you tell me that you've met me before I met you. I don't remember, but we were working in the same spaces. In nightlife here in Toronto, in the club scene, in the concert scene, you started at a very young age at like 14 years old?
12, actually.
12 years old. Sounds strange, but when you take into account that most of what you were doing at that time were all ages events, it's not that strange because you were essentially marketing towards your own peers. You were in high school or entering high school and then in high school, and the majority of the people that would come to these events were also high school students. But you learned fast. You had
Very
to grow up quickly. You were working with adults, obviously, because it's not all children running these massive events, and they were massive, like with thousands of people at these events, some big artists. And you moved on from there to working in the corporate world in a few different capacities, and now you bring all of that to what you're doing here. So when you speak of I guess the scarcity mindset would be the opposite of the abundance mindset that you're experiencing now. Did you feel like that was prevalent? It was always very cutthroat and a scarcity mindset in all of the fields that you worked prior?
100%. And I actually would love to tell the story about...
Tell it.
Yeah, because I never get to. And I find that, like, I think people need to understand where I'm coming from. Like, being 12 years old, being in nightclubs, and, like, really understand why I'm, like, very seasoned at this point. So, funny enough, when I got into nightlife in Toronto, it was by a fluke. And I find that a lot of the time, the industries I've gotten into were always by a fluke, and, like, I didn't want to.
They were debatable because you were in a certain place at a certain time and something pulled you towards that thing. I don't know if I call that fluke, but it wasn't your intention.
No, definitely was not my intention. So at the time, a good friend of mine, she got into it. She got into wanting to be a promoter at the time, brand ambassador by today's terms. Okay. And she brought me in and she was like, look, like, you're the popular kid. Like, I don't know nobody. Why don't you just come in and help me out? And reluctantly, I agreed to it. And we ran, at the time, I don't know if you remember, so because we were dealing with kids literally like 12 to 19 years old, means of transportation was the very, very key to organization of these events, because it's like, how do we get children to make sure that they're safe coming to these events? And so at the time, we would run buses from like major areas. And to whoever have attended these events, and I'm sure people are going to be seeing this, there are a few of you, it'd be major parts of the city. So it'd be like Yorkdale, Scarborough Town Center, Mississauga.
Okay, so
Square
the meeting
One Mall.
spot to get on these buses, they're school buses, I'm assuming.
School buses.
Yeah, so that's such a time.
Yeah.
The meeting places would be at the major malls around the city in all the different areas so that kids could get to them easily because they go to the mall anyway.
Exactly. And we would run, like, at the time, obviously, it would start with one bus, but some places would have 6 to 7 buses. And the crazy part to me, and these are, like, the individuals that, like, I still work with and we're still friends, is the people who would be in charge of those. Because they were the same people, same age as me, and in charge of other kids, right? Like, so that was the very interesting dynamic in that, because getting to work with other individuals, like, like-minded individuals at that time, and building teams around those people, like making sure that they knew how to organize it, giving them the right tools, giving them instructions. And so when I got into it, we ran a few buses from Bathurst and Shepherd, and the significance of that was this was in between two major areas, Fairview Mall and Yorkdale, and this was just an intersection. And the significance of that was that's where I grew up, and so we wanted to put it on the map at the time. And they were like, well, there's no need for that. There's like two major areas right beside it. Like, why would you do that? But I was like, no, we're gonna do that because
this is my squad. This is my hood.
Is gonna
this is my
show
area.
up.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I know the
up.
people here.
Yeah, and so we started with one bus, and I think like we ran it to 3. And by the third one, I was like, I want to be a part of this. I don't know how I got into this. Like, how do we get here?
You know what, though, to your point, I find it so fascinating that, again, yes, there were adults involved, obviously, because it's not just a bunch of 12-year-olds running these massive events, but how much you must have been learning as a 12, 13, 14-year-old, you and your peers who were also doing the same thing with you. And because I know all of this, it's not lost on me that now you're such a leader in your friend groups, in your work groups. You are the organization person in most cases, whether it's an actual work thing or a leisure friend thing. And you're experiencing that. And I want to take this opportunity to remind you, because I know that I feel like you forget when imposter syndrome rolls in. Mm-hmm. But like, you've been doing a lot of things that apply to what you're doing now. And there are times when you mentioned to me that, oh man, I feel like, and this is, most of us feel like this at many times while doing anything. You feel like, oh man, I'm not enough, or I'm working so hard, but like people don't respect me the way that I want them to, or I don't want to overstep because I'm new here. I think that's the one. I don't want to overstep because I'm new here. And I want to remind you that you're not new to Earth. You're not new to business. You're not new to running teams. You're not new to marketing. You're not new to organization. And all of those things play heavily and are the skills that allow you to do what you do at the level that you do it. And there's other people that maybe are more seasoned in a specific thing, but they don't have all those tools in their belt.
No, and I really appreciate that. I think you're one of those people that really reminds me of that constantly, and that I'm super grateful for that. I actually want to elaborate even further because you were like building teams and doing that. So from the bus situation, it actually snowballed really quickly. And I want to shout out Ronnie, because Ronnie really, that was the owner of the company at the time. And he really mentored me through it all. Like a lot of the entrepreneurial skills that I acquired obviously were hands-on experience.
Yes.
But there was a lot of mentorship in terms of being a woman in such a male-dominated industry. And I
have a question. You were 12, 13, 14. How old was Ronnie at this time? Because he's not like he was a grown man either.
No, I honestly don't remember, but probably like 24, 25.
Okay, so he was still a young promoter by all standards.
Yeah.
A young businessman by all standards.
But he was doing it for the city. And so once I got into that and like the numbers started rolling in, they really brought me in and they were like, yeah, you should be on the team. Like not by means of somebody else's +1, like you should be on the team. And then that's when I started to take it more seriously. And to me, automatically, I was like, okay, well, I looked at the structure of the company and it was great, but I wanted to be the best. Like that's my competitive side at all times. So I was like, okay, I'm going to build a team of people like me, like high performers, you know, to make sure that my name gets remembered from how many tickets we sell for the events. And so at the time, this was the time of Circa, this was the time of government.
Legendary nightclubs here in Toronto.
Legendary nightclubs, if you don't know.
Massive, like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people. Yeah,
I think with Cool House, government at the time was 5,000. And so when I started building this team, like it was the heavy hitter team. Like I only had 10 or 11 people at the time. I would love to shout out all of them, but I feel like they would be like, why are you using my government on this? But eventually we started bringing 2,500 tickets to each show. And then...
Wait, hold on. So your team of like 11, 12 people selling 2,500 tickets per event. At around what age were you guys at this time?
This was at like 16.
You understand that's impressive.
I do now. Looking back at it, I was like, damn it, I wanted to bring more.
I just want to, okay, cool.
And to me, it was like, okay, and like that's when people started being like, okay, who's this female promoter doing that? And like the people that we were bringing, it was like essentially we were filling up half the venue. And then we started, I wanted, like, to me, I have a mindset of scalability. Like, okay, how do we scale this now? So at the time, instead of doing just big events once a month, we started doing 3 or 4 events, and some events would have events in different cities like Oakville, Scarborough, and let's say Toronto at the same time. And like some
on the same night.
Same night.
Okay, so this is all surrounding areas of Toronto, and you have thousands of people spread across all of this.
Yeah, and my team would be responsible for 1 of 2 of them. And I really wanted, again, to me, the idea was I want to be the best.
Right.
Like, I want to be remembered as the best doing this. And I got to that point. So part of the attraction for me has always been, I came to Canada and I never got to experience like other countries, because by the time I left, I was 12 years old. Like, I haven't been able to go to the concerts yet.
Right. You know what? We're skipping steps. How old were you when you came to Canada?
12.
And you jumped right into this, essentially.
Yeah.
And there was a language barrier because you were living in Bulgaria primarily.
Primarily, yeah.
But you've lived in other parts of Europe. Mm-hmm. But English was not your first language.
No, they actually used to call me the immigrant. They're like, oh, that immigrant girl, she's doing the most.
Okay.
So yeah, my English wasn't the best.
I'm just noting that like what could be a barrier that you overcame in achieving what it is that you were able to do at such a young age.
I was actually like, I wish I had the footage from some of the interviews I had to give because they were embarrassing. I was like barely like.
There's got to be some around there somewhere.
Somewhere in there.
Challenge accepted.
But yeah, so once we started doing the numbers, and to me, always the focus was the production. So like when I say we, like I really wanted to make sure that these kids that we are bringing are experiencing concerts, are experiencing nightlife, not from the scathe lens of like, oh, nightclubs, ew. Like from like the experience of like music, stage production, dope artists.
Yeah, and culture.
And so I would personally pick some of the DJs, some of the artists we would have, and they would always be local. And we wanted to make sure that we showcase local artists in each city as well. So like all the cities, all the surrounding events we would be doing, it would be DJs out of that area, artists out of that area. You know, rappers that were trying to drop music at the time would come in and do performances. And that would add to the production of these events, which separated us from our competition at the time, because it was the attention to detail and the attention to, like, we would spend extra money that technically we didn't have to. At a point, you make events, people want to come to it just for the sake of, like, this is the only event happening that day.
Right.
But we wanted to elevate the experience so much by handcrafting everything. Like, I remember sitting there listening to submissions from DJs. Not all of them were good. But, like, mixes on mixes till, like, 2 a.m. at night. Mind you, I used to be in high school.
Uh-huh. But was your process to select DJs to perform at these events that you didn't know personally.
Exactly.
Already.
Because I'm like, well, the quality has to be there.
Right.
I have to be able to sign off and say, you know what, if we're bringing people here, they're going to have the best time because we are going to have the best DJs. We are going to have the best artists, and we're going to have the dopest choreographers. We're going to have amazing dancers. Their outfits are going to be handpicked. Like, the attention to detail has always been so prevalent in my life because I'm like, I want to make sure that if I sign off on this, like if it has my signature on it, then you know it's going to be dope.
That speaks to everything that you're doing now. Mm-hmm. Because skip ahead to, you know, all of that experience that you're taking with you into your current venture, which I'm involved in. So I was going to say but yours, you were the CEO, called MUZE, which is a music platform that is taking the disruptive route.
Yeah, I like that. Disruptive has always been my forte, I think. Like, I don't want to come in lightly and be like, hey, can we do this? Uh-huh. Like, I want to come in and be like, no, we're doing this.
Well, yeah, and traditionally the music industry, I mean, it's not been very artist-friendly per se. That's putting it lightly. But it's not designed, I'll be as frank as it is. The music business is a business. And it's not ever been about the art above the business. When you're talking about the major companies, corporations, you know, multinationals, they want to make their money. So they've set it up in such a way for them to make their money, and they're okay with other people making money also, As long as they make their money first, then it's the most. So what you're doing now is counter that. That's what I mean when I say disruptive. It's like you can't come in nicely into a situation like this.
I was going to say, if we're going to talk about that, then let's call it what it is. It's exploitation.
Right.
A lot of the time, labels, intermediaries, and any sort of people in the industry exploit artists because of the lack of knowledge that artists have about being entrepreneurs.
Right.
Like a lot of artists I speak to, they're not entrepreneurs first, they're artists. I'm like, they're like, I want to make art, I'm talented, and this is what I want to focus on. And then comes in the label and says, okay, well, I know you don't know how to do any of this, so I'm going to come in and exploit you. And then we're going to make money off of you, and you're going to be happy with whatever we give you.
Under the guise of it's supposed to be, we're going to help you.
I was going to say, now, they were slick about it before, but now it's not even the guise of that. Now it's just like, well, without us, you can't.
I think they're trying to push that narrative now because it's not true anymore. It used to be true.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have to say that before. And I want it to be very clear. It's like the record label, the record business, the record labels, all of that, they're not the evil empire. They're just a bunch of business people trying to make money. And they're very clear now more than ever about what their intentions are. Before, it was kind of, oh, we're going to make you a star. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But they knew they held all the cards to get you and your art to the masses. Now with the internet, now with Web3, it is not quite the case anymore. Actually, it's not the case at all anymore. And they recognize that. So the approach is different. And to their credit, there are a lot more fair deals happening now when artists have leverage. And that is the thing that is, I think that MUZE is going to be so effective in. And this entire idea of music and Web3 and direct to consumer situations is because artists can now have leverage. Artists can build a fan base and reach people directly and have enough motion to not need another entity to come in and help them, but to consider partnerships that will be better for their business. And that's the key word there. It's business now. And I think that artists in general understand that versus what it was before.
Yeah, with MUZE, it's always been about giving the power back to the people.
Yes.
And giving the power for artists to be direct to consumer. So in that, the ability to drop music, the ability to drop behind the scenes content, the ability to make experiences, but not have to go through third party in a sense of like multiple labels, multiple, platforms, just kind of putting it all in one and giving them the opportunity to just know who their fans are. And that's like the biggest selling point for me personally. It's not having that number on the screen. So you have 5 million listeners. What does that mean?
Right.
It's the ability to know those 5 million listeners, to be able to communicate with those 5 million listeners, to be able to say, you know what, I'm coming to Toronto, I'm coming to Montreal, I'm coming to Vancouver, I'm coming to Chicago, wherever you're going, to be able to say, okay, I can actually see which one of my fans are there. I can actually talk to my fans from there and be able to say, you know what, come and support my show. So it's that direct to consumer approach that I think is the disruptive part, because for many years, labels give you the opportunity to see the number, but they're very, very protective of your fans, the fans that you're supposed to own. They lease it to you.
Yeah, well, there was always been gatekeeping, and it's not just the labels; it's also the digital streaming platforms. It's anything that comes in between you and the people that are consuming your art. Even down to the companies that sell tickets and all of that, the venues. There's always other entities involved, and historically they've held the cards. They're the one collecting the data. They're the one getting people's names, email addresses, phone numbers, maybe physical addresses, understanding where people are geographically. So for those who don't understand how this will work in Web3, what differentiates what you're building to, say, Spotify?
That's a great question. And I think I want to move away from Web3 because I think that that word scares people still, in a sense that they're like, okay, I don't know if I can use this long term because it's Web3. We built something that is very normal platform. Like if you look at it, you don't have to learn how to use blockchain. You don't have to learn how to create a crypto wallet. It's all very sign up with your email, use a credit card. Yeah, it's Web3 in the back end, but we wanted to make it, the ease of use of it was the core
so
goal.
In that then, because, and it's interesting, we all, Web3 is like a buzz term.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember Web2 being a buzz term. It was just the internet. Why do you think that is? And like, I understand what you're not wanting to scare people off by saying this new foreign thing that they don't know. But like, when things went from the beginning of the internet, where we just read stuff, which was Web 1, we would just go on the internet to get information. You could read stuff, you could not contribute. Web 2 is where we're at generally now, where most things are, Instagram, where you can put pictures and videos and you can write and add things to the internet. Web 3 is the difference where you can actually own the things that you put. You're not putting it on somebody else's platform. You can create something for yourself. Why do you think that it needs to be distinguished? Or I mean, I guess you're saying that it doesn't need to or shouldn't. But like, why do you think that distinction continues to be made with this term Web3 when nobody really said that with Web2?
Because with Web3 comes ownership, which means comes branding. And we want to make sure that you know that this is ours. Like, we're making it such a severe difference. It was the same as like house and EDM, right? Like, to me, it's the same idea. It's like, this is different because we own it and it has branding and it has marketing.
That's a can of worms. That's a can of worms. Come on. When we're talking about house and EDM, EDM was a Americanized term that was made commercially for them to understand how to sell it to the mainstream. People in music never called what they were making EDM.
Web3 is like, we're the pioneers of something new that you're going to want to be a part of it. Okay. And the branding of it is strong because we take ownership in that. Like, I love to be able to say, you know what, I'm part of the Web3 space.
Right.
And it's because I'm pioneering a space that's still so new. But what I'm really pioneering is you being able to fend for yourself, you being able to own the stuff that you create, you being able to make money from the things you create. So yeah, I take pride in that because why wouldn't I? I want you to be good. I want everybody to be good. I want all of us to eat.
So then how do you communicate that without using the term Web3? Because you feel like it might scare people.
I think the way to communicate that is like, Web3 scares people because it's still not widely adopted. But if I explain it to you, like people that have gotten a chance to sit down and explain what it is, the utility of it is just transparency. It's clarity. It's being able, like I said, to own things. So when you really sit down and you start looking at it prospectively, you're like, okay, it's not scary. But people are always scared of something they haven't experienced yet or don't know how to use. So it's just, and this is why we're like with MUZE, we're so big on educating artists and fans and other people about Web3 because it's digestible. It's not hard and you don't have to be scared about it. But if we're talking in a general conversation, beyond all that, we also made it that you don't have to learn it in the way that you think you do in order to be able to use it and reap benefits of it.
I like that. It's in the sense of conversation and showing people what it is and showing people what the benefits are, especially when speaking to artists. It sounds to me like you're more interested in speaking of the why versus the what.
Exactly. It's the ease of onboarding. Like, I don't want to sit here and tell you how the back end works for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
When really I'm trying to tell you why you should be using it.
Yeah, and to be honest, most people don't even care.
Yeah.
Like, myself included, I'm an artist. I will be releasing music and experiences through MUZE. I'm into Web3. I love the idea of ownership, but I don't need to know how the sausage is made. I just need to know that it's delicious.
Exactly. It's like, when you pay for something on the website, do you need to know how the payment rails work from how it connects to your credit card to the platform? No.
Absolutely not.
But you're like, I can use my credit card. That's the main point.
Yeah.
That's
we don't,
the idea.
like, we all order stuff from, say, Amazon as an example. Very intricate. Don't know how it works. Don't care. Did my package come tomorrow? Yes or no?
That's the idea.
Right. Okay, bet. So why then MUZE? Why is it so important to you to revolutionize the music industry? Why is it so important to you to give the power back to the people? Because that seems to be the driving force here, without you having said it directly. And I know you, obviously, but like also, even when you speak of it, every time you speak of it, I see the passion welling up in your eyes and in your you get really, really
charged up.
You care. You genuinely care. I don't think anybody can hear you speak about this and wonder whether or not you care.
I think for me, the answer is twofold. So on one end, my biggest why to any of the businesses that I've ever done, it was that I'm motivated by the opportunity to make a difference in the life of others. And that's been like the driving force of, like I said, everything I do.
Mm-hmm.
And the second part is I am a creative first. Like,
yeah, we haven't touched on that yet.
We haven't even touched on that yet. But I've been through the trenches. I know what it's like to not have your work be valued. I know what it's like to always have to prove why you're worth what you're worth. I know what it's like to be in a pool of other creatives and being made to feel like we have to compete against each other.
Being made to feel like is the key in that.
Is
that
being
is
made
not
to
the
feel
truth.
like, and it's not the truth. And to me, it was like, okay, it's almost like, you know how they always ask you, okay, what would be the advice you gave yourself when you were younger?
Uh-huh.
Like, MUZE is the epitome of that, in the sense of, like, this would be the platform I wish I had. And now taking my why and being able to build that platform is why MUZE exists, is being able to positively impact people like me to be doing what they love and providing them the opportunity to make money from it.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah, I've always said like that, yes, but also if something doesn't exist, create it.
Yeah.
Like that's what I lead with all the time. To me, part of being an innovator is just creating. And I know you're big on that too.
Yes, I am. I've created many things over the years, but we're not talking about me right now. We're talking about you. And we haven't even, we barely mentioned the fact that you are also a creative. You've done many things. I would say most notably is photography. Mm-hmm. As far as things that you've created artistically. You've done other things too, from clothing and graphics and various things, but I would say the photography, there was a few years there where that was your main source of income, it was your main passion, and you photographed. We just actually had a conversation recently because something else that I have done that you took the photos for was somewhere, and I just took a step back. I was like, do you realize how many places around the world your work has been seen, your photos? A lot of them are my face, granted, but not just me. But just in general, like the work and the quality of it is good enough to be on these billboards and these massive signs and in arenas and all these things around the world. And that's not even your main thing.
No, but it goes back to my competitive side. Like whatever I do, I want to be the best at it. Mm-hmm. And then like when I accomplish that, it's having a conversation within myself to be like, okay, I know I can be good at this. Do I want to be great at this? Like, do I want to take this to the next level? Holmes?
Right.
Because even in what you said, like, I feel like I haven't even, when I did it, I think it was like 3-4 years maybe I did it for.
Yeah,
roughly.
I would say that. And
I was getting to that, I find like that turnkey point where like, if I continued, I could have been more recognized. I could have done a lot more, and I could have.
And you recognize,
but I didn't want to.
Right. I was just gonna say it sounds to me, I don't think we've ever had this specific conversation, but It sounds to me that you get to the point where you recognize, you know what, I could go all the way with this, but then you ask yourself, does this excite me enough to keep going?
Well, but it's also, does it serve my purpose? Like, right? Like, to me at the time, I've never reflected on it fully at the time, but like I've noticed that, again, like you mentioned, I would start doing something, I would get good at it, and then often I would move on. And like doing reflection on it now, I'm like, okay, why did I keep doing that? But really, really, it's because I remember reading something about the art of letting go. And part of that was, okay, exactly what I said. Like, yeah, I could be great at this. I could become the photographer. And I'm blessed to say that because I have the work ethic, I have the ambition. And if I really want something, I'm going to make it happen.
Right.
But does this serve my purpose? And my purpose is I want to inspire others. I want to help others. I want to leave a legacy. Like, I don't want to just be good. Like, I don't want to be the famous person. I never wanted to be the famous person. but I want to make sure that there is a legacy left by me where it's like I've touched so many lives of others in so many good ways that that's what's left with my name and behind.
Right, but to that point, you just taking photography as a thing. Say you decided, you know what, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to go all the way with this. That would absolutely inspire. Like, it inspires not only aspiring photographers, but also by the way that you do things and how you are getting more and more comfortable with speaking about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and using your socials to, you know, let people in a little bit more. That, I feel, inspires people to look inward and be like, she's so passionate about that thing, and she cares so much, and she's working so hard, and she's being so consistent and showing up for herself, and look at these results. What do I care about that much that I can go hard for? And it doesn't have to be the same thing that she's doing. Like, there's definitely something to be said for that. Like, and I will tell you my direct parallel is, because I say this all the time, Kobe Bryant, Mamba mentality. His discipline is what I admired. I'm a basketball fan, of course, and I loved watching him play. But the aspect of his game versus anybody else, including Michael Jordan, who is my personal favorite of all time, Kobe just had this specific brand of intensity and the amount of care and attention to detail and just the mentality of, I'm going to be the best because nobody's going to outwork me.
That's what I aspire to be.
Right. That can be done with anything. I don't need to be a basketball player to be inspired by Kobe.
I see what you're alluding to. It's because I loved photography, don't get me wrong. But music has always had like a very special place in my life.
That's fair.
From like a young age. And then like, and this is something I've been acting on recently. Like, I've always been so fascinated with production of music, which is why I've worked with a lot of artists. I've been in studios with a lot of artists. I've always wanted to create music. And up until very recently, like I've done a lot of work with artists, but I've never got a chance to actually start from scratch and like produce. And that's something I've been like dabbling in recently and like learning a lot, obviously from you, and just by myself even, and really acting on that desire to be able to create not visuals for once, but sound.
Okay. I think, yeah. I think in a nutshell, and this is me not speaking from knowing you, just speaking from purely the information in this conversation. It's like, I feel like you have a lot of different interests.
A lot.
Some are connected. Some are completely, like one, for example, is barbering. You were a barber for a year.
Shout out Roberto.
Yeah, shout out Roberto, and taking you in as a mentee to help you learn how to do that, because you decided, you know what? I really like watching barber videos. This is exciting to me. I want to learn how it works, and I want to learn how to do it. And then you did that.
No, and like to speak on that experience quickly, Roberto is such a master of his work. Shout out upper management. You guys were family. You guys are still family. But speaking about working with people that are passionate about their craft, it was both good and bad. And the reason for that is, like, Roberto has taught me things that, like, I learned quickly because of his help, because of his ability to teach.
Right.
But after doing it and after learning, he also made me realize that looking at how much he cared about the craft, I'm like, I'll never be able to care this much about hair.
But you had to be honest with yourself.
No, and
that's his thing. Everybody has to find their thing.
No, and for me, that was the part why I decided to like stop, because I was like, you know what? I'd be doing this art a disservice and doing it half-ass because I see somebody who cares about it, every detail of it so much, and I can never compete with that. And I'm okay with that, because it's like, it's still a skill that I acquired that I'm super grateful for. But sometimes you gotta know when to walk away, when to leave things at the table.
Well, that was my point. And I feel like as much as you enjoy photography, as much as you enjoyed barbering, as much as you enjoyed many things that you've put your hands to, music always seems to come back.
Well, yeah, like, because from when I was 12 years old, this was the fascination.
Mm-hmm.
Like, being on stage after we've created those events and seeing artists perform, seeing the crowd go crazy, like, I lived for that feeling.
Yeah.
I could not tell you how many things would go wrong in a night, how many parents would bitch at me. And mind you, I'm like a year older than their children at the time. So
Still so wild to me.
Still so wild to me too. And just being on that stage at, like, 1:15 a.m. and being like, oh, this moment makes everything worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And like just seeing DJs do what they do, and like again, like that excitement of music and how music changes the environments that you're in. To me, that's been such a fascination from that time. And then anything I've done since, it seems to be like the universe is like, yeah, but no.
Yeah, but music though.
Navigate me back. Like, even with photography, like I was shooting primarily music artists, and I was like, okay, is this
that
a sick joke?
True. That is true. Yeah, I think that music has made it very clear in your life that, hey, this is the thing.
Hey, asshole,
this is your thing. You can run away if you want, but I am here. That's awesome, and I think that it's really, really cool that you found a way to do that in a way that's actually going to impact artists and music makers beyond an individual show or beyond some photos that can be used for something, no matter how big those things can be. Because again, you've had some photos on billboards around the world. You've had artists perform in front of thousands of people that you helped put that show together and create that moment. But this thing that you're working on right now is different.
It's my heart and soul.
My heart, my soul.
My heart, my soul.
It's different. It's disruptive. It's going to be long lasting, and it's going to be. And I tell people this too when I'm speaking of MUZE and taking music to Web3 and to the blockchain and whatnot without trying to confuse them too much. I just want people to understand the heart of it is to be able to go direct to consumer without all of these intermediaries. It's like straight to the person who wants your art. You can deliver it to them directly and also know who they are so you can communicate with them. And I'm all in favor of, and MUZE is not the only thing, the only thought in this way of thinking. Mm-hmm. And I'm a believer that although I know MUZE will be the best one, it's important that there are more because people need to wrap their heads around the idea of, for the same reason why for when streaming came out, because it was a reaction to pirating music with, LimeWire and Napster and all that stuff, the industry had to make the adjustment. There couldn't just be Spotify. There has to be Spotify, Apple, Deezer, Tidal, SoundCloud, Bandcamp, all of these things to exist for enough people to understand, oh, this is how it works now.
Well, see, and that's interesting you say that because I entirely agree. And oftentimes, and I'm sure other founders can relate, when you talk to VCs and they're like, okay, so who are your competitors? I don't see them as competitors because we're all working towards a common goal. And the goal is ownership.
Right.
Like the goal is, whether it's us, whether it's, any other platform that exists in the same sphere, it's the ability for us collectively revolt against the big dogs. Yeah, that are still big dogs for now.
And the status quo.
The time is coming.
Yeah, the status quo to disrupt how it's working because it is not working for artists at large to earn a living. The top elites, yeah, they're doing great. But most people, just like in any field of business, like just because you open a store does not mean you're going to be Walmart.
No, and that's part of the reason, too, why with MUZE we don't ask for exclusivity. Mm-hmm. I've always been of the school of thought that if something is good, you're not going to want to leave.
Fair.
So with us, like, the way we're building it is if you ever don't like the platform, you can actually export all your contacts, export all the people, and move on to something else. Because to me, again, if you enjoy the platform, if we're treating you good, if we're doing good business, and we lead with that, we'll lead with transparency, we'll lead with integrity, why would you ever want to leave?
You know what's very interesting to this point, because that's a great point. Mm-hmm. Imagine Just imagine with your mind's eye if the traditional record industry worked that way. If they were, you know what, you're an artist, I love what you do, let's sign a deal together. And if you say to me during that deal, you know what, I don't like how this is working, can we change this or can I go somewhere else? And I'd be like, do you? Because I'm going to create an environment where you're not going to want to leave. Imagine that was, because I actually just saw a little clip of a Prince interview earlier today where he was speaking about his record career. And he was saying that, he got signed very young, like a lot of artists, did not understand the business at 17, 18, 19 years old. But by the time he was in his mid-20s, he had been in the business for a while. And he said from his third album onward, he stopped taking advances, which is when the record company gives you a sum of money to record your project, and then they get that money back when you sell it. He stopped taking that money because he had the ability and the know-how and the gear to record himself. So he started recording his own things and making everything in-house, in his house literally, or in his own studios or what have you. Mm-hmm. And he legitimately had conversations with them where he said, look, man, I understand when you were paying for everything, you owned it. But now I'm paying for everything. I don't want to leave. I'm not saying I need to leave because you are still useful in your part of this deal where, the distribution of it. But the production of it used to be on your dime. Now it's on my dime. Can we renegotiate this thing? And at that time, they just kept forcing the contract in his face. Like, well, no, you signed this, you signed this, you signed this. This is the deal. And he's like, yeah, I get that. But like, you're not holding up your end of that bargain anymore either, because I'm taking it on. Yeah, no, you didn't ask me to, but I'm just saying, can we not renegotiate? Can we not work together to make this thing great so we can all be happy and all make this money? And the response to that was basically no. And
how did that end?
Exactly. Prince ended up disrupting the entire situation and never, ever, ever let them breathe after that.
And see, that's interesting because obviously you would hope that labels would operate that way, but it's just never been that way. It could have been.
It was right there for them, though, especially in that case, because Prince was an artist that had that kind of notoriety, fame, was bringing in that kind of income. That would have been a great example. But what he said in that space, though, is like they couldn't renegotiate. They couldn't change the way that it worked, because if they changed the way that it worked, then they would cease to exist. And the analogy he said is like, if all you're doing mainly at this point is distribution, because I'm making the production, it's like, why do you get ownership of the thing? Because when I ship something through FedEx, they distribute it, but they don't get any ownership. They get paid for what they do.
That's exactly it.
And that sounds like exactly how you're describing MUZE and this new way of thinking with delivering music to the people who want the music.
We're the FedEx of the Web3 world. From us to the people.
I love it. What does success actually mean to you?
That's a great question. Success means how many lives did I positively impact? So for me with MUZE, it's the ability to see how many artists are able to produce music and make a living from the money they make from MUZE. And that's quantifiable. That will be quantifiable.
Facts.
With just people in general, how many people did I inspire? And though that's a little less quantifiable, I think we often see it. Like, we often see the difference we make in people's lives, and whether they're, how do I put it? Whether it's quantifiable or not doesn't even matter to me, because it's just like, when I give or when I want to do something for people, it's always unconditional. Like, I don't want anything in return. It just, that's what fulfills my purpose. Like, it makes me feel good to help you. And if that's how I feel, that's enough for me to quantify that as success, because end of the day, I feel good from helping you. So it doesn't even matter whether or not you ever come back and say thank you, or if you're grateful for it, or if I can see fruits of your labor long term, that doesn't matter to me. To me, success is just knowing and deep in my soul that I was able to help, I was able to make a difference, and I'm okay with that. That's success to me.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time and sitting here. We sit and talk all the time, but thank you for opening up on the microphone, on camera, and allowing people to be inspired by you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I love what you're doing with this podcast. I think the name Live Actually speaks to like who you are as a person. Because out of everyone I know, you do live actually. Like against all expectations of society, against, boundaries that are set by other people or whatever the case is. Like you live by who you are and what you want to do. And it's that freedom that I really aspire to. I love it.
You mean my flowers?
Of course.
Thank you very much. You go like this. I do this with all the mandem, so we're going to do that today. Boom, boom,
Okay.
boom, 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 boom.